on the computer. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Women in Youth Ministry podcast. This week's guest is Mary Helen Lockee, the Assistant Director of Student Ministries at Myers Park UMC in Charlotte, North Carolina. Mary Helen is a big fan of glitter, a champion for student ministry, and a seasoned communicator. She's passionate about empowering youth to own both their faith and their doubt by creating environments that use strategic language to foster a lifelong faith. I will cheers my coffee to that, Mary Helen.
Cheers, Heather.
So, Mary Helen, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Tell us something completely fun about you that has nothing to do with youth ministry.
I would say, in honor of great Taylor Swift, I'm in my travel era. Right now. On the day we're recording, my husband and I are going to Savannah, Georgia for the weekend just to visit. We are going on a cruise in October. It'll be my first cruise. I'm so excited. I studied abroad in college. I think you asked what goes outside of ministry, but I love Myers Park because we travel a lot for our ministry as well. So this summer, I'm actually going to Kansas City, Missouri. I'll be in Israel and Costa Rica. And so outside of ministry and inside of ministry, I love, love, love traveling.
I love that. So you mentioned Taylor Swift. What is your favorite album?
My favorite album, honestly, I'm a big fan of Midnights right now. I will just put on Taylor Swift Shuffle, and whatever comes on is what I'll listen to. So I don't know that I could pinpoint one, but Midnights has been on repeat lately.
I love it. I think I'm a 1989 girly, but I am loving Midnights right now.
Yeah.
As far as my era, I think I'm I was in my Reputation era for 2 weeks, 2 years. Goodness. I do think I'm in my Midnights era. We're like refining ourselves. We're owning it, right? We are Bejeweled. We're the whole deal.
Oh, I love Bejeweled. It's a fun one.
All right. And then, okay. What is your biggest youth ministry fail?
My biggest youth ministry fail was one of my first years in ministry, and I was just the middle school pastor at the church. So just 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so I came up with this event called First Wednesday, and it was the first Wednesday of the month. I really love super creative names. And we gathered in the youth building for something fun. And that was the pure intention of it. And so one month we did a field day during spring break. Another time we did a color craze. And so this particular month was going to be flannels and flapjacks. So we were going to wear flannel shirts and have a bonfire and have pancakes. Well, about 10 minutes before the event starts, that was supposed to be 80% outside. Of course, it starts raining cats and dogs. And the important piece of this is that the youth building at the time was a big metal structure, metal building. And so we're inside. I was like, okay, it's going to be a great day. So we put one of those fake bonfire videos on the screen so we can still feel like we're at a fire, but we're not really. And then lightning struck the building. And so it blew some of the outlets on the walls, which the griddle was already burning through them. So we had like one outlet for 80 to make 80 to 100 pancakes for probably 20 to 30 kids.
Oh my gosh.
Because we were doing a pancake bar and all these things. And so I have one leader that's on the stage, literally like sitting, flipping griddles in between like the drum set and the guitar. And we have one griddle left. And next thing I know, my mom's calling me and she's like, did you know that there was a tornado warning right over the church? And we had some leaders that were in the college nearby. So all of their phones are going off with emergency alerts. And so I'm trying to get these kids out of the big metal building because at the time I didn't know the emergency plan. Looking back, we should know that. But we had to walk across the parking lot. And I always joked that my job was herding cats in the rain because middle school is my love and my passion. But that night, it truly was herding cats in the rain because by the time we got over to the main church building, there was an adult class happening. There was a worship session. Like all these things are happening. And everyone's kind of looking at us like, what are you doing? We thought we'd like dropped our kid off over there. What's going on? Oh, there's a tornado. Oh, there's a tornado. So no one over there knew. So we sat in the hallway of the kids ministry and played Mother May I and Red Light, Green Light and whatnot until the tornado passed over. We get back to the youth building. All of the outlets are gone, including the sound system, the speaker, the projector. Like it is a total bust of a night. And the kids still refer to that as one of their favorite nights of youth ministry.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I have so much to say. One, So we at my former church, we would do an event every year called PJs and Pancakes,
Oh,
same
fun.
concept.
Yeah.
And we would also have the pancake bar. And I quickly learned, because I also blew the breaker in our building many
Uh-huh.
times using that many griddles. So my hack was, you go to Walmart or Sam's Club or whatever, and you buy like the pre-made mini pancakes.
See, this is why you're smart. Yes.
Mm. This is why I'm around, is for the hacks. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
why people keep me. And I like would set them out and they would kind of thaw, right?
Uh-huh.
And then it was just like a quick, like you throw them on the griddle just to warm them and you're just like moving them on.
That's brilliant.
So they still have like that griddle pancake smell. They still feel like, it's getting fresh pancakes, but no,
No one knows.
no, well, they knew, but they didn't care. And they were the perfect size. Like, yeah, there were never any burnt. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was great. And volunteers loved it because like the mixing of the pancake dough, not the thing, not their
Yeah.
thing.
No. So that night
Um,
still lives in infamy.
yeah, we also every year on our middle school camp, we would go to a water park that was like in town, and it was so much fun. It was great. But every year it would rain out that day.
Of course.
And I didn't have a backup plan. My backup plan was taking 100 people by school bus to a Baskin Robbins and letting them eat ice cream. And there was not enough place for them to eat the ice cream, so they'd eat it outside in the rain. And excuse me, and it became like this joke. And students would say, can we do this every year? Can we just not play in the water park and go to Baskin Robbins? I got smarter. I just never took them to the water park again. But yeah, that was like the joke. They're like, we love this. Because I tell them you can get anything you want. They'd be like, anything we want, middle schoolers.
Yeah.
And I'd say, yeah, as long as she can eat it.
As long
And
as you eat it, you can get it. Yep.
4 scoops of ice cream, terrible decisions.
My
Terrible
team
decisions.
always laughs at me because I'm the one that says, "Do we have a rain plan for that?" And it's because of the Great Pancake Incident of 2018 that
Oh yeah,
we
I'm
have the rain plan.
CEO of Rain Plants now. Enough trips to Baskin Robbins. So Mary Helen, share with us how you got involved in ministry and how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah, I started in youth ministry serving as a small group leader my sophomore year of college. My junior year of high school, felt a call to ministry, but I didn't really know what that was going to look like or what that meant necessarily. And this ties into what we'll talk about in a little bit, but I refused to work in a church. I never wanted to work in a church. Here we are now. And so in college, I went to a church that, we do a sermon on serving and everyone needs to serve. And I'm the type of person that if you tell me to jump 5 feet, I'm going to jump 6 just to make sure I've cleared the mark. And so I, that day, walked over to the youth building and said, I want to serve with junior girls. And I was a sophomore in college, so I was barely 2 years older than
Yeah.
these girls. And the youth pastor at the time said, I don't know if that's the wisest choice. Didn't necessarily say it in those words, but looking back, I can totally see where he was coming from.
Yep.
He said, but I have an opening with seventh grade girls. How about you start as their small group leader? And I wanted to laugh because seventh grade was the worst year of my life.
Yeah.
Lots of bullying. We all know middle school girls can be mean. Middle school guys can be mean too. Just not fun. And I wound up following those girls until they were sophomores in high school, and then became a coach for small groups. Then, long story short, that church brought me on as an intern. And then before I knew it, I graduated in December and they hired me as their middle school pastor in January.
Wow.
So it was just kind of a domino effect. And of course, it was not that easy or that simple, but for sake of a 20-30 minute podcast, we'll leave it there. But those girls are now sophomores in college and we still keep up. And one of them just got an internship as a guest services person at a church, and another just graduated with her associates. And I'm just really proud of those girls and keeping up with them. And I tell them all the time that if they were not my first career in youth ministry, I don't know that I would have stuck with it, but they were fantastic. And so I owe all of my heart to Chloe and Ashlyn and Erica for sticking with me as I grew up with them as well. And then some things shifted at that church, and I knew that I wanted to stay in ministry. But I also knew my heart wasn't necessarily there any longer. And so I actually met the other assistant director of youth ministry in a cohort for women in youth ministry through the youth cartel. And she said, well, we have an opening at our church for a middle school person. Why don't you apply? Long story short, I did. She was the one person I knew in Charlotte, and here we are on your podcast today.
I love it. I will say that Mary Helen's Church in Charlotte, I love that youth ministry staff. Like
I do too.
It has been a blast, like getting to know the team, and because I was just at a Methodist church, and there is like a community for United Methodist, kind of the bigger churches in the denomination, and we were able to hang out at a gathering the last 2 years, and like our churches were like peas and carrots, like
We just hit it off. Yeah.
a blast. And your lead youth minister is a man who champions women.
Oh my gosh, Jason is the best boss ever, 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 ever. And I will say that again and again and again.
I mean, I agree, because when he talks about his leadership style, I'm like, that sounds like me. So
and I'm great, so he's great.
but yeah, Jason's awesome, and your team is really, really great. So you have a really cool place to serve. So
me too.
It's awesome. So today you are on to talk about a topic that you're passionate about. So you completed a senior capstone project titled, "Why is the Church Such a Mysterious Entity?" And I'm really excited to talk about this. I'm just curious, why did you choose that? Like, how did you land on this topic for your senior capstone?
My students are always, or the students at Myers Park are always amazed when I tell them that I've never studied theology a day in my life. My undergrad is actually in rhetoric and in theater. I did a double major.
Very
and
cool.
About, I think it was like a 33 split of a third of us who graduated in rhetoric with a rhetoric degree. Rhetoric is words, and you see how I'm stumbling over them. It's always funny when I talk about rhetoric and it's like, I can't use words. Anyways, but about a third of us went into ministry. A third of us went into public service at some level. So maybe government, maybe law. And then a third of us probably eventually did marketing or English or organizational structuring, something like that. And again, my junior year of high school, knew that I wanted to go to ministry, but I just did not want to work in a church. I did not want to be one of, quote, those people. I had been kind of hurt by the church. I had lots and lots of friends who had been hurt by the church, especially in the theater community. And I did not want to be one of those people. And I knew the moment I said, I don't want to be one of those people, that was it. That was my capstone project. Because the fact that those people, that phrase, resonated not only with me, who had grown up in church and loved my faith from a very early age and committed to it, whether that be in a church or in a secular setting, and just, loving Jesus in my everyday life, which we all are called to do. But I knew that since that resonated not only with me, but with most every person that I talked with, whether they had a faith story or not, growing up in small town Georgia, that was the project for me. And so then I started asking the question, why does the word church stir up so many emotions in people? Why is this such a mysterious thing? Why do these big feelings exist? And how can we, as the body of Christ, turn the tables on that?
Yeah. Wow. So the result of this project was a passion for how to create more inclusive environments. Why is it important that we create an inclusive environment? I mean, who does the church exclude?
I consider creating an inclusive environment to be potentially even much broader than the word inclusivity that we're going to think about when we have this podcast. So I'm thinking about including neurodivergent students, thinking of including those who might be in the LGBTQ plus IA community, those who have grown up in church their entire life and sometimes are the hardest people to love, including families, including families that look different than ours, including those who are adopted, including those who are in foster care, including those who have single parents, including those who go to private school, public school, have one sibling or only children, live with their grandparents, are in community home, including all types, because I think that makes the body of Christ richer. And I realize that there's so many people who listen to this podcast and have differing opinions and ideas on what the inclusivity of the church should be. But at the end of the day, I firmly believe that youth ministry is a place where we can open the doors and show children what God looks like and say, yes, God loves you, period, end of sentence. And that if a child and my husband laughed. I was like, I get to talk about linguistic relativity for 30 minutes and I'm so excited because it's like my soapbox. But if a child is told that from an early age, I firmly believe kids will check out of the church mentally at 14, but physically at 16. So if we can set the stage where they believe that they belong no matter what at 13, 14, 15, then they're going to stick around at 16 to 18, and that's going to drive them into a lifelong faith in adulthood.
That's great. So linguistic relativity, big buzzword. You're excited to talk about it. What is it?
Yes. So linguistic relativity is the concept that says your culture or your perspective informs the way that you see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sounds fairly simple, but when I was diving into the research of it, it looks particularly at different foreign languages. So if you look at how Romance languages are structured versus how maybe English is structured, or you look at how Native American or Indigenous people talk about the concept of time versus how non-Indigenous people talk about the concept of time, it looks different. And so this theory is actually applied to foreign languages, but I was interested in applying it to different cultures. So we all come to the table with a culture of, I am the culture of wife and sister and daughter and youth pastor and someone whose favorite color is glitter and I love tacos and my laptop is purple and all the things are purple, so I'm a purple person. We all come to the table with a melting pot of cultures in our own self. And so if I'm coming to the table with all these cultures and Heather is meeting me at the table with all of these cultures, but our cultures speak different languages, even though they're going to say the same word. So if I say grace, I know what I mean by the word grace. Heather's going to say grace and know what Heather means by the word grace. But we may have completely different definitions of grace. So as we walk into the youth ministry space, it's my absolute passion to say, here's what I mean when I say XYZ. Because there's another theory that ties into the work that I've done called expectancy violation theory. And the way I like to propose this is to always ask, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream? So what is your favorite flavor of ice cream, Heather?
My favorite flavor of ice cream, I would say I love like a berry cheesecake would be like my dream ice cream.
That sounds lovely. So if I handed you berry cheesecake carton of ice cream, what would you expect the carton to look like itself?
On the outside?
On the outside, yeah.
I would say I have low expectations for how that. I mean, it would be carton shaped.
Great.
Other than that, I don't have any expectation of colors or words. I would expect it to say like berry cheesecake on it.
Okay. Do you have like a favorite brand or anything like that?
No. We usually get ice cream from ice cream shops, but when I lived in St. Louis, there was this like brand that was just in St. Louis, and I often think about that carton.
All right. So if I were to hand you that carton of ice cream, you have an expectation of maybe it's a white in color with swirls of berries in it. It's going to have a cheesecake flavor and it's going to be cold. Maybe there's going to be ice crystals on it. But the moment you open it up, imagine that you see chocolate melted ice cream in the carton. And that's not what you're expecting.
Right.
And so our brains do the same thing when we have language or dialogue with people, that we expect a certain thing when we show up. But our brains can only handle that disappointment so many times before we check out of the source itself. So if a teen is showing up to a place and they're being told, I love you, I love you, I love you, you belong, you belong, you belong, you're here no matter what, you're here, you're welcome no matter what, you're welcome no matter what. But then they make a decision that's counter to our culture and we say, you're no longer welcome with our actions. We say they can't come on a trip with us. We say that, your mobility aid actually can't get into our space. We say that the clothes you are wearing are not appropriate. In some circumstances, that works.
Sure.
But if we say all those things with our actions, that's mentally creating a disconnect that if we have that relativity in our language, and then we have the disconnect between what we say and what we're doing, we have two different scenarios that then all of a sudden over the course of years is going to cause a student to check out of youth ministry. And that's how they all dance together.
So to be clear, this isn't necessarily about Christianese, which is a whole topic, right? This isn't about that. It's more so about being who we say we are, or
Exactly.
doing what we say are. That's fascinating. Yeah. Honestly, at first I was thinking that it was about Christianese. It made me think of every time we sing Build Your Kingdom Here, there's some kid that's like, why are we trying to build the church or burn the church down?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. And that's like one thing, but it's more so about like, if I slap up a flag that says you are loved, how is that going to prove to a student that they're loved?
Mm-hmm.
And it's why I've preferred the word expansive over inclusive,
Mm-hmm.
because like the way that I read those two words is like inclusive is like we're including who's already here, and expansive is like who's missing and
Yeah.
how do we get them here. Interesting.
And I
So
think this I'm sorry, go ahead.
go for it.
I think this conversation definitely can apply to Christianese, because if we're standing, I had a kid on a retreat this winter, and we were singing about the blood of the lamb. And he said, why does this sound like a Taylor Swift love song gone wrong? I was like, that makes a lot of sense. We've never told you what the lamb is, and I have zero reason to believe that you would know what a lamb is.
Yes.
We're in Charlotte. We're not on a farm. And so we have to do the work of dissecting those things. But yes, it also applies to what we say, what we do, and how those things align
Fascinating.
or don't align.
Do you have any concrete examples of how we can better meet the expectations of our students?
Truly, my biggest tip and pro tip when it comes to getting this out of our heads and into practice is just saying, this is what I mean when I say.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether that's saying, and I think sometimes you do have to set those boundaries of, we're going on a mission trip soon that has requested we wear certain things on the trip or don't wear certain things on the trip. And so we want to honor that organization's policy because they've done the work to put it in action. And yet some of our girls are, well, why can't I wear the tank top? Why can't I wear the shorts? Well, when I say that we're going to honor our ministry partners, it means that we're going to respect the work that they have done to honor the people that they work with. So, in honoring what they're doing, we're going to honor their dress code. And so, giving the explanation on the back end, all of a sudden, those girls said, oh, okay, totally, I'm on board. I love social justice and working with organizations, and that fits into what I want. But if we had just showed up and said, no shorts, no spaghetti straps, nobody can do that, then that's going to put up that barrier of, well, why do my clothes matter on a mission trip? And like I said, there are appropriate examples of times that policy is applicable. But I think youth are smart, and we sometimes don't treat them like they're smart.
Yeah.
And so giving them the explanation may feel like we are handing them more information than they need, but I think this generation craves that information.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other examples of like concrete examples of how youth ministries do this, either well or not well?
I think people who communicate to middle schoolers really well will give concrete examples of moving the abstract to the concrete. So when you talk about patience or love or
Mm-hmm.
grace, you're going to give tangible action items or activities for them to work with their hands. I think with high schoolers, this looks like allowing them to push back and to doubt or ask questions. And I don't think that's only applicable to high schoolers, but I think that happens the most for that age group of if we're going to say all of you is welcome here, then we've got to welcome those doubts, and we have to welcome the faith, and we have to welcome the uncertainty. Because if they're not going to work it out or feel safe to work it out at this age, then they're not necessarily going to stick with it for a while. And I think that's the hope of all of us at the end of the day, is that we're not just after school club for 6th to 12th graders, but we are building a foundation of faith that's going to carry them long, long, long past where they may never text or call us or see us in their 40s and 50s, but they're going to remember, oh, wow, Heather let me ask questions about why the earth was flooded and Noah had to build a boat. And that sounds so weird, but I was allowed to ask questions and I was allowed to push back. And so I think that's another concrete example.
That's great. It's great. Yeah, I often think about with the trends of church attendance right now. I think the trend is that people are coming to church maybe once every 6 weeks is the newest trend number, the average person.
I've heard that too.
So you have to kind of ask yourself, we are very used to planning these like 3 or 4 week series, right? that like everything gels together and builds upon one another. But what happens if a kid shows up for just week 3 or just week 2? So how do you like teach that series in a way where they're not feeling behind, you
Yeah.
know? And the other thing that I think of is like, how do you preach a topic or a sermon in a way that someone who goes to church every day gets something out of it, but also someone who's never been before gets something out of it, you know? And so all of those big like Christian buzzwords have to be explained every time you use it. So like your example, when you're talking about grace, you have to say, and this is what grace is for us. In my context, whenever we talk about justice, we have a definition for how we define justice so that everyone is on the same page. So I think those things are really important. Like if you talk about the story of Noah, not everybody may know the story of Noah. So when you're like, yeah, and this reminds me of Moses, or, you know, and Moses and the Israelites, someone in the room has no clue
Who's
what you're talking
Moses?
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have to like over explain things and simplify things. That doesn't mean dumbing down things, but making sure that yeah, that people are on the same page as you. Otherwise your communication is never going to go well.
And I think another concrete example I've been working on personally in the ministry at Myers Park is when I say you matter to me outside of the walls of this church. I'm working through some different health things right now that don't allow me to just be up at all hours of the night and go to a lot of basketball games. And I just got married and we're unpacking the house and all the things. So in the next school year, I hope to be more in person at basketball games and softball and spelling bees and all the things. But what I started doing is saying, oh, you have a dance concert on May 22nd, and I'll plug that on my calendar and send the kid a video of, hey, I'm so proud of you. We're so excited about your dance concert. The youth team loves you. And so that's a way that you can show up outside the walls of the church without having to be physically outside the walls of the church.
That's really cool.
And so if you're going to say, you matter to me, you're going to need to matter. They're going to need to know that they matter to you outside of the church just as much as they matter when they're inside the church. And that's just one example that I've taken recently of saying, okay, maybe I don't physically have to show up, which I think is the best option. But let's say you have like that May 22nd example, I have 2 girls in 2 different dance recitals at the same time. How do I pick which dance recital I'm going to go to? You know, that's like picking your favorite child, and that's just not a thing we can do. So both each kid got a text or a video saying, hey, so glad your dance recital is today. And then my husband and I went to a festival together because I didn't pick. And so we got to do something and both kids felt loved. And so just thinking through what am I saying versus what am I doing? And, you know, our grandmothers all probably said, if you had a close relationship with them, your actions speak louder than your words. And I don't think it's necessarily that your actions speak louder, but your actions speak just as much as your words do and should match.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to share, you want us to know about this?
I just love it so much. And I can sometimes get in the weeds and, you know, spit a bunch of theory and just get really excited about it. But it's very practical at the end of the day. And saying, this is what I mean when we say this. Our group is, you know, even if you make up a cheer that is mangoes on 3, and mangoes on 3 means love one another as God loves us. Like only our group is going to know what mangoes on 3 is. Then that's going to create that language. Because the thing that I love about language at the end of the day, that's sometimes blows my mind when I think about it, but language is agreed upon sounds that we say out loud, that we breathe. That's it. And so if we're going to agree upon the language that we use in our context, that means our students have to agree with that definition too. And they may not agree with it in the sense that they believe every word you're saying, but they're going to be more apt to agree with it when you give them the definition.
That's great. That's great. All right, our last question. We are the Women in Youth Ministry podcast. What would you like to say to the women listening? It could be a word of encouragement, something you've been thinking about lately. Free reign here.
One of my favorite verses when it comes to ministry is, do not grow weary in doing good, for at the right time you will reap the harvest. And from someone who has, in the very short and sometimes long seasons of ministry I've experienced so far, the harvest will come. And so if you're in a season of burnout or you feel like you can't go any longer, I know a lot of us in the Facebook group have been talking about sitting in empty rooms. Don't grow weary. You've got this, you have a community behind you, and ultimately God has called you to it. And that is a really hard thing to sit in. And it's really beautiful when you get to the other side of it. So just encouragement there.
It's great. It's great. Well, thank you for being on today. And do you have any like suggested reading for people if they want to learn more about linguistic relativity?
Honestly, a quick YouTube search. I did that this morning to brush up on some of the terms.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be very honest, the things that you're going to find, communication theory is a book that I used a lot in school. They have a whole YouTube channel. It's beautiful. It's like folks dressed in 80s and, older videos, but they're going to refer to it in different ways. But I've just taken those definitions and applied it to youth ministry. And so just doing a quick Google search or YouTube search, there are plenty of folks out there who have done the work, and they're like 5-minute videos too. So if you want to learn more, it's a quick podcast or a quick video, and you can add it to your toolkit.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on, and thanks everybody for listening. We will see you soon. Oops.